Hello everyone, and welcome back to another session of Bloodborne PvP and another weapon showcase. This time I am using the Burial Blade, which is a weapon that is typically acquired in New Game Plus, due to the fact that you need to kill one of the final bosses of the game in order to acquire it. Now that being said, I am using it in New Game. I have a video on my channel that shows you a way to get it in New Game. It does have spoilers. I might accidentally say a few spoilers in this video, so shame on me if I do, but this is a warning to you. If you don't want any, don't watch the video yet. Simple as that. So, getting started. The Burial Blade. This weapon requires 10 strength and 12 skill in order to use. It has a D scaling in strength, a B scaling in skill, and a B in arcane. The physical base damage of the weapon is 160, and its arcane base is 60. And that's pretty much all the basic info on the weapon. Now, as far as the pros and cons of this one are concerned, this weapon actually has a surprisingly long reach. When you're in its secondary form, its reach, it's just surprising. I mean, that's really the best way to describe it. It can catch you off guard very easily, it can catch your opponents off guard very easily, and I'd find myself thinking I'm not gonna, hit my opponent, but then I'm actually within range, and it's just strange at times. It's hard to get used to, and what's even harder to get used to is the fact that when you transform it, there's such a huge difference in the reach that the weapon has. You go from being, using a curved sword, essentially, to having a scythe that has insane amounts of reach. So, I mean, that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing. It's hard to get used to, but once you do get used to it, then your opponents will have a bit of a difficult time fighting you. So there's that. Now, like the rifle spear, your transform attacks with this weapon can actually be used to bait a disruption with your gun very easily. It's actually the exact same sort of bait that you can do with the rifle spear, where when in your secondary form, you can transform the weapon back. It does a wide horizontal sweep across, and then you can just shoot the gun, boom. And typically, if you set it up right, you will get a disruption, and it works out very well. It's the exact same bait as the one I had mentioned with the rifle spear and demonstrated with that. I don't recall if I actually demonstrated it in this video, but I know for a fact that it does work the same because I've gotten it numerous times on stream, so it is what it is. Now, the first form of the weapon, it of course does have faster attacks, and they do less damage than the secondary form, but that being said, your R1 attacks actually are kind of interesting with this weapon. Now, first off, as far as their damage multipliers are concerned, your dashing, running, rolling R1s all have a higher damage multiplier than the standard R1, which is somewhat unique in a way. It's not typically the way that it is with most weapons, so it's something worth noting. So, it's definitely something to keep in mind, and something that you need to watch out for, because if someone is using this weapon, and they are aware of that fact, they will be focusing on doing those sorts of attacks instead. Now, when you're going to be doing your transform attacks, thing is, the transform attacks from your first form into your secondary form, they actually have the second highest damage multiplier that this weapon has, aside from a charged R2. When you're going from your first form to your secondary form, that transformation attack has a 1.6 times damage multiplier. The damage multiplier for a fully charged R2 of this weapon in your first form is a 1.7 times damage multiplier, and in your secondary form, the highest damage multiplier is a 1.9, which is also your fully charged R2. But for everything other than a fully charged R2, that transformation attack can be pretty damaging, and that's a good thing. So there's that. Other than that, other pros that are worth mentioning, this weapon has very wide sweeping attacks in its moveset, in case you haven't noticed that by now. Here's my pointing out to that fact. It's got very wide sweeping attacks, and that's a fantastic thing if you're playing on lock, and if you're, in a gank situation where you need to hit multiple opponents at once, or you're going through PvE and you get attacked by a huge mob of enemies. It works very reliably, so keep that in mind when you're using it. And if you're ganking someone and they're using this weapon, keep that in mind if you're fighting against them, because they can hit a lot of things at once, and it won't necessarily end well for you. Now, Other than that, the last final pro that I have for this weapon would actually be related to its charged R2 attack in its first form. You can actually dead angle backstab someone with it. I did that in one of the earlier fights. I didn't expect it. I didn't think it could be recreated reliably. I've found out recently that it most certainly can be done reliably, and that is kind of scary and a little bit stupid in all honesty. But that is something that you can do with this weapon, so watch out, guys. If you're fighting someone who's using this, watch out. Now, as far as the cons of the weapon are concerned, this weapon has blind spots. It's got blind spots in both forms. In its first form, the blind spot on its R1 attacks, excluding the first R1, is along your right side. Because after the first R1, which is a horizontal slash, you start to do more vertical and diagonal slashes going up and down from your bottom left towards the center just above your head. Not necessarily the best thing about the weapon. It's something to keep in mind. You don't want to get caught R1 spamming with it and have someone on your right side, because you'll miss them and it will not be pleasant for you. Now, that being said, if you're fighting someone, stay on their right side if they're in the one-handed, or rather in the first form. If they're in the secondary form, the blind spot for the first R1 attack is on the left side. However, the rest of the R1 spam will take care of that situation. They start to sweep horizontally after the first R1, so there's that. Now, about the R1 spam that I've been talking so much about, it's a little bit slower than most weapons, so you gotta watch out for that. You don't want to start trying to trade, because that will not work in your favor. You'll end up getting stunned, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to take that route. It's not a smart course of action. And finally, the last con I have for this weapon is that it actually cannot be buffed. Not a huge deal, not a major thing at all, because buffs generally in this game are not overly common as far as, weapon buffs. I mean, the Hunter's Bone, whatever it is, that buff, that's a common one. But as far as weapon buffs and such, they're not common. Other than Bone Marrow Ash, of course. But anyway, that's all I've got to say about this weapon. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it helpful in one way or another. Please like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff, and I will see you all next time.